As we resume, let's dive into the next series of plenary session. To begin with, we have plenary session 5, chaired by Dr. Rajesh G. Kunur sir. We invite sir to kindly take the stage and introduce the speaker for this session. Sir is currently working as Director Pro Vice Chancellor at Eudoxia Research University. Over to you, sir.
कौन है मैडम कहाँ है उसका ये सीवी ओके थैंक यू good afternoon to one and all. I am very happy to invite Dr. Nazia Naqvi, statistician, Shia College of Nursing, Lucknow, UP, to share the session. About the author, speaker, Madam has completed her doctorate in applied statistics from Baba Saheb Bhimrao Ambedkar University, Lucknow, and holds a master's degree in statistics and also in BSc, Bachelor's of Science in Physics, Statistics and Mathematics. She is a distinguished academician, a researcher in the field of statistics, and serving as an assistant professor in the Department of Statistics at Shia PG College, Lucknow. Madam has worked previously at ERA University, University of Lucknow, the Central University of Punjab, Dr. Shakuntala Misra National Rehabilitation University, and Bhimrao Ambedkar University. Of course, if you see the advancement achievements of Madam, she has worked in different faculty development programs, workshops, conferences, seminars, training programs to enhance her expertise in statistical methodologies and data analysis. And she has also organized many conferences by the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. Of course, she is also reviewer at peer-reviewed journals in the Journal of Indian Society of Agriculture Statistics, Sri Lankan Journal of Applied Statistics, Journal of Reliability and Statistical Studies, and also she has done her research through Dr. Naqvi, advancements in statistical methodologies and their applications. She also attended many workshops like in data analysis using SPSS, data analysis using R, and also having undergone many FDPs at by Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, and also in summer school on statistical theory and applications at the Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata. Additionally, she has also contributed with Dr. Naqvi in academic discussions and also active participation in international and national conferences. Madam, I invite you to the session. Hearty welcome. Thank you.
I request sir to kindly formally welcome Dr. Nazia Naqvi ma'am with a live plant. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
A very good evening to one and all. Thank you for the introduction, sir. It was indeed much more than I am. Thank you. Okay, this, huh? Okay. So today I am here to talk about statistical learning and data modeling. Perhaps it's something different from what you have thought of and have been talking about since morning, but it is very much related to the field of nursing because it is about statistics, it is about data and how you use that data to advance, to make better advancement in your field, perhaps. So what I have made out of these slides is that how we can enhance our healthcare system, basically, right? From the time a patient comes to a hospital or a healthcare facility to the time he is administered there, admitted there, till he gets discharged. There is numerous forms of data that gets collected and compiled in different formats. Now the idea is to use all that information from the patients and generate some kind of a structure, whether that structure is completely based on an AI or it is semi-AI structure, to help the forthcoming patients, or how you can help or introduce your new treatments and technologies. That's the idea here. So first and foremost is statistical learning. That what is statistical learning? If I explain it to you in the easiest possible language, it is nothing complex or complicated. Statistical learning simply means whatever information you gather in terms of data. That data could be digital information, that data could be through reports, that data could be observational charts prepared, that data could be through the different scans, MRIs or X-rays which have been done in image forms, no matter what format the data is in, right? Once you can use that data somehow to improve, to identify, for instance, here there are certain examples I have given, to optimize care plans, to personalize treatments, to identify risks that you can identify initially in the treatment process and have a step or a process to reduce them. So that's the idea of statistical learning, and that is what statistical modeling is all about. Now, a few places where it has most utility is in evidence-based practice, like you gather the evidence, you see it, you incorporate it and improve it. That is one way of utilizing it. The other is real-time decision making. Now this is something which is growing very fast. Real-time decision making. You have models up and running which are taking data at that very moment, giving you up with solutions, possible optimal solutions that you can choose and draw best from your judgment and experience. Not to completely rely on it, but from the possible outcomes it is suggesting to you, on your skill and your experience, you can choose the most optimal one, perhaps, and go ahead with it. Then there is predictive analysis. This is what modeling is all about, where you try to predict. For instance, let's say we have patients coming and we have treated them, now we just want to predict that what are the chances that under certain situations or conditions, the problem or the disease can regenerate, it can come back to the patient, right? So you are predicting, that is what a predictive modeling is all about. Or you have got patients of different stages of cancer, you are trying to predict what is the survival rate of the patient, what are the chances, how to proceed with the medication that would be highly recommended for that patient type, particularly for that patient type. So that is what predictive modeling is all about. Now here is the role of data in nursing research. I just mentioned this, that there is so much data that you are collecting. It is whether structured or unstructured data that you are gathering. The idea is to use it somehow to intensify your procedure and improve upon your care strategy. That's the basic idea. For instance, I have given some examples here, like predicting post-operative complications using machine learning. Right? Now, machine learning might seem like a very big term or something that is very complex, but in reality, it isn't. And it is something which is very, very useful and fruitful. Then there is like using patient history to predict complications. I am not from medical background as much, but I'll tell you this. At the time I got pregnant I was being operated for my pregnancy, there was a bunch of information they asked about my parents' history and my history, as to whether we have hypertension or do we have diabetes, does my husband has it, do I have it, does anybody in my family up till my forefathers had it, do I have a thyroid problem, any of those kinds of history. Now for the moment I thought, what's the use of that? Like, I need to go to an operation table and my child needs to come out, that's the end of it. Why they need so much of information? But the idea is to prevent any kind of complication that they might foresee, which they are trying to analyze beforehand. Because if there is a certain history, then they can predict that, okay, while operating, such and such complication is a possibility that can come up, to be better prepared. So that is what is all statistical modeling is all about. The entire statistical modeling is based on this concept, on this simple notion only. The idea is to take information from you as much as possible, ease it out, make it in a format that is easily readable, and then utilize it to predict or prevent any unseen or foreseen situations. Okay. Now, types of data in nursing research. There are 3 types which we classify. Earlier, there were only 2 types that were being talked about, which is structured and unstructured data. Most of the time, that's the kind of data we have grown up learning. Structured and unstructured data. Structured data is the kind of data you get from a lab report, which even now I am slightly capable of understanding. If my father gets a report done, I also try to see into the reference range and try to make a sense out of it, that whether, okay, he likely has a problem or he does not have a problem. Educated guess what I make from there, right? Then there is unstructured data, which is the observational notes which have been taken, right? From the time you get admitted to the time you get released, information is seeked from you which you tell and which has been rightly interpreted and taken. That is what is unstructured data. Now before, these were the only 2 formats of data that were used mostly for any kind of interpretation. But with the upcoming technologies and presently in the era of AI, I must say, right? The growing era of AI, if we say, then there is a 3rd format of data which has now come into role play, which is called big data sources. Now, big data sources is not, I would not say it's kind of a data which is based on 1 patient or 10 patients or based on 1 medical institute or 2 medical institutes. It's a huge chunk of data, maybe data comprising an entire institute of all these states combined together, getting collected at one place. That's how big that data is, and that's how that data is utilized. It is not people from one region that are being treated. It's not a hospital of a certain kind of a specialty that only that kind of data would be required. It is collected and accumulated on such a grand scale that all these confounding factors become irrelevant. So therefore, it is big data, and this is the kind of data which is actually used in your machine learning. The new fancy term for machine learning now is AI. So basically, it was always there. It's just that before we used it as a tool, where we were only using it for analyzing and not for interpreting what we are getting out of it. But today, the word AI comes into existence in a manner where it's not only easing up the job of delivering content to you, but also at the same time, it is telling you what to make out of that content. Now, that's the place which is a risky place where we need to understand and bifurcate ourselves. That, okay, fine, a calculator can do 2 plus 2 is 4. But what does 4 means? In your situation, that is something always you have to be the best judge of. So no matter how big or how advanced a technology is being utilized, your importance and relevance is very, very crucial into how it should be utilized. A software can always get to it, do certain calculations and give up you with the possible few answers. But which of those possibilities is the most suitable one, applicable in a given scenario, is something which will be based on your years of learning and experience and practice. So do not deny that. Do not go completely indulged in AI is what my thought process is for now. Utilize it like a tool. Be with it like a tool. Now the data collection methods. Now of course, as I say, there is a structured and unstructured data. All the structured data gets collected through surveys. They get collected through the lab reports you get. They are through observational studies. Nowadays, you even have gadgets, which you can have the patients wear completely full-time, 24/7. They can gather intel from there as well, right? So those are all your structured data collection points. Then the other aspect is where you actually introduce a scaling system, like pain scaling system. You have a pain scaling system. Now, pain is a very subjective thing, I may say, right? From feeling what degree of pain I may say I feel to what degree of pain you say feel, is a very, very subjective content. So now just saying that, okay, it is paining. Is your hand paining? Yes, my hand is paining with the kind of pressure you are putting. Now it's a very subjective thing, how to deduce it or what to get out of it. So there are scales being formulated so that they can accurately measure and have a universal or a standardized concept of scaling there. So these are the two broad ways of collecting your data sets. Then once again, what are the key aspects in statistical learning? When you have supervised data, then you have supervised learning schemes. When you have unsupervised data, then you utilize unsupervised learning schemes. Basically, supervised learning schemes, I have put up one example, like you are trying to predict a patient's deterioration. That is a supervised learning scheme you will utilize. And if you're trying to identify some chronic disease subgroup, now that would be something which would be more unsupervised style of learning. Then there is one more thing, which is from the AI point of view, which is reinforcement learning. Now what is reinforcement learning? This is something where you say that given the amount of information, given the amount of procedures you have, you are trying to develop something very, very optimal out of it. Right? Given the kind of resources you have, what is the best way to deal a certain patient? Now that procedure, when done through a software, becomes a part of AI and is actually your reinforced learning procedures. Then how has statistics throughout developed or changed, even in the field of nursing and healthcare for that matter? I just was having a conversation with one of the speakers there. She told me that there is a nursing, in the nursing courses, there is a program of statistics which you teach students perhaps. And I think the kind of learning you get there is measure of central tendency, mean, median, mode, dispersion, visualizing, making some graphs out of it. But now, with the presence of higher technologies and advancements, these are the initial or the baby steps that we do in terms of statistics. Like this is just looking at your data. You have a very complex chart sheet which is difficult to understand in 2 minutes window. So it is better to visualize it, make a graph out of it. It is better to highlight the key points in a table so that it is easy to remember. Now that is what descriptive statistics is. Now we have grown much, much far from there. Now there are more to do than just lay out the data. Earlier, it was a period where you could just lay out the data, present the information in a most suitable manner. Now, there is much more you can do with that information. And that is all part of inferential statistics. That how and what you do with the information you gather. This is all about how you gather the information. So as I said, inferential statistics, there are three broad things that you do over here. One is hypothesis testing, when you are actually trying to test the theory. The other one is point and interval estimation, where you're trying to estimate. And the third and the most important one is your predictive modeling. Now this is the most important part, where you try to predict that how a particular scenario could convert or how it would change. How risky or non so risky or moderate level a certain operation could be or certain kind of a treatment could be. So there are three different ways in which you can apply your inferential statistics. Now, piece by piece, if I try to explain, as I said, there are three ways of doing it. One is testing, and the other is your point estimation, and then there is your prediction part. If I put it through you with a very easy example, then let's say, think of it this way. You try to manufacture a certain drug for any particular XYZ disease, right? Now, already there must be some existing drugs which are for the same disease. Now, your idea or your objective is to somehow manage to say that your drug is more efficient. Now, it could be efficient in terms of how it works. It is better, it has more healing power. It is efficient then in the sense that it has less side effects as compared to any other product in the market. Or you can say it is better in the sense that it is cost efficient. It would do the same amount of work, but it is less expensive as compared to every other drug available in the market. Now for all the three scenarios, how you will proceed, how you will conclude that what you are claiming, what you are saying can actually be tested, can be verified. Now that would be done through testing of hypothesis. That you will run trials, you will conduct trials, with patients, administer them properly, give them your drug, give them the other drugs, and monitor them, and then make a conclusive decision that whether what you are claiming is actually justified or not. That is testing. Now, while you are doing this testing, unknowingly, you are also doing one more part of the statistical procedure, which is estimation. Let's say I say that, okay, a certain medicine can heal my headache in, let's say, 50 minutes. So if it can heal my headache in 50 minutes, the idea is to actually gather a big sample of, let's say, 500 people, give them the medication and see that does, on an average, it heals it in 50 minutes or not, irrespective of the age of the patient, irrespective of the reason of the headache, irrespective of the duration of the day, right? So now when the idea is that does on an average, it does that. On an average, the minute I use the word on an average, there is certain thing that I'm calculating, which is the average value. So that is what is called the estimation part. Now when you estimate it, like saying that it is going to heal it in 50 minutes, that's a point estimation. On point you are giving one number. When you say that, okay, it's going to heal it in a window of 40 to 60 minutes, then that is an interval estimation. You are restricting yourself within an interval. So there comes the picture of interval. So while testing, you are automatically doing point estimation or interval estimation. Then the third aspect which I talked about was your predictive analysis, right? When you try to predict. Now when you try to predict, that is little bit more complex because now you are trying to create or form a model out of it. The idea is to generate some kind of model which will have the capability to actually predict a certain outcome. Let me give you an idea about it. So let's say, for example, this is a linear regression curve. We all know that okay, height and weight of an individual are very much related, right? This, even I tell my 4-year son that, okay, if you don't eat much, then your height would not increase, and so your weight would be affected by it. So they are correlated. If you are a taller person, by default, you will be slightly heavyweight as compared to a non-taller person, right? There is more science to it, bone density and everything, not getting into the science part of it. We are aware of this kind of relationship. Utilizing this relation, a BMI has been formed, body mass index. Right? Now we have a very simple concept of body mass index. You look at your body mass index, you get to know whether you are a balanced person, whether you are an obese person, or whether you are an underweight person, right? So instead of using height and weight, instead we use BMI because we know that there is some kind of relationship that exists. Now despite knowing that there is a certain kind of relationship that exists, and let's say I can even tell you that, okay, for a minute, let's assume that there is a 0.80 degree of relationship between weight and height, 80%, some kind of relationship. Even if I give you that and I kind of tell you my height here, you cannot predict my weight. Because they are related, but under what formula exactly, under what relation, with what terminologies they are actually related, that you cannot justify. So predictive modeling is constructing such a formula, making such an equation that you can actually rightly predict certain outcomes. That is what predictive learning is all about. Now, predictive learning can be of multiple types. It can be of linear regression. It can be of logistic regressions. To differentiate between the two, because you will be using it very, very often, when do we use linear regressions and when do we use logistic regressions? Let's say, for instance, I want to classify on the basis of the symptoms whether a patient has a severe or a mild level of disease, right? So when the severity or the mildness of the disease is concerned, or the fact that, okay, I have a stage 4 or a stage 3 of a terminal disease and the patient is going to survive or not survive, right? So when that kind of analysis needs to be done, the kind of predictive modeling you do is called logistic regression. That's logistic regression. It's basically, if I tell you in simple words, it is like you have categorical information and you are trying to choose one of which category does it falls into. So that kind of study is your logistic regression. Then the easier one is linear regressions. Linear regressions are quite easy here. You can say that, okay, let's say if a certain person gets his alkaline level to a certain degree or certain units of measurement, with what factors does it get associated? Is it associated to him having some kind of background, his biological history? Is it because of his demographic characteristics? Is it because of his BMI? Is it because of the fact that he exercises or not exercises? Is it because of the dietary habits he have? So when under certain factors you try to predict one variable, that is your linear regression. Both of them are your predictive techniques. One is used when you are predicting it under certain factors, and the other is when you are trying to classify in out of the two groups. Then there is something called survival analysis. Now this is again part of AI, a very fast growing thing. Survival analysis. This is mostly related to kind of terminal disease scenarios. I have a few examples here, like trying to estimate the survival rate of cancer patient under different treatments. Let's say there are 3 or 4 different types of treatment strategies. Which treatment procedure tends to have a higher survival rate? Now that can be done through survival analysis. Investigating that how long it takes for a disease to reoccur after an initial treatment has been given. What are the chances that it would reoccur and you will again have to come back, right? That is again doing prediction. So that these kind of predictions are done through survival analysis. Now, data analysis techniques. Now, as I said that there are a few techniques. Predictive modeling you can do testing of hypothesis, but based on your study type, you decide, like, what is a study type? The kind of patients you have and how you have collected that data, that is your study. That decides the type of your study. For different study types, you can run different types of techniques or analysis. There are so many types of studies, if I tell you, and there might be few more that I might have not written here, given the space, right? So there are different types of studies types, whether it's an exploratory study, is it some kind of confirmatory study, are you going to do some kind of observational study, is it correlational, is it a clinical study, is it a cross-sectional study, is it a follow-up study? Different types of studies will have different types of techniques, how they will be used there. Now, for instance, if I say cross-sectional study. Now, this is the most basic kind of study that you can do, cross-sectional study. This study is what? This study is that, let's say I collect data of 100 patients from a hospital. That's it. Irrespective of the fact which kind of diseases they have come to get there, get administered there for, what are their age groups, what is their gender, nothing. Just a bunch of people selected from a same place. That is a cross-sectional data, cross-species data, right? Species not in the sense that they are not all humans, of course they're all humans. Species different, crossed in the sense that for different things they might be there. Different age groups, different genders, some could be for diabetes, some could be for hypertension, some could be for some liver problem, fatty liver issues, different kidney problem, different scenarios. They're all bunched and clapped together, right? So what kind of studies we can do here? The purpose is to assess what kind of prevalence rate is there for a certain disease, or what are the risk factors associated with a certain disease. Now, when these are the kind of objectives you have in mind, then a cross-sectional study is the kind of study you would conduct. For instance, I say, okay, I want to know that, okay, in Uttar Pradesh, what is the prevalence of people having diabetes, right? Is it at par to what is it in overall India or not, right? Is it more? Is it less? So now this will be a part of a cross-sectional study. If I want to do an analysis and I want to see that, okay, is somehow stress related to hypertension, right? I want to assess that, okay, the degree of stress related to hypertension, is it? Or for instance, I say that, okay, let's say the shift the nurses are working in, right? The shifts they are working in, does that shift have some kind of impact in their alertness, right? That if they're constantly working in night shifts, how alert they are actually. Or if their shifts gets altered every second day, how alert are they, right? So that is an association test. When such a kind of a objective you have in mind, then the kind of study design you will use is cross-sectional study. Next is your case control study. Now, case control study is the most common. Here you try to compare outcomes between 2 or more groups. Like one example I was just giving, that trying to monitor the accessibility of 2 different drugs, right? So now what? One set of people you will give the drug, one set of people perhaps you will not give the drug and see, okay, which of them heals better or quicker in time. So that is a case control study. One are your actual cases, one are the cases where you imply some kind of control strategy. You intervene. Intervention study. You apply some kind of intervention study. Like for instance, even in a classroom, let's say you're teaching in a nursing classroom, a teacher comes up and just teaches, like for instance the way I am delivering. I'm not seeking anything out of you right now. I'm just delivering my part. Now this is one way of teaching. The other way of teaching could be that when I actually stop for a moment and try asking back something from you, right? Then you would be a little more alert and little more understanding. So out of the two methods, if you ask me, over the years I have learned an interactive session is a much more learnable session, right? You get more out of it, you learn more out of it. But the format is that I'll not engage you right now. But in reality, that is what is more engaging. So how can I say that, or how can one say that? That is through a case control analysis. If you operate through a case control analysis strategy, that's what you will get to know. Then there are cohort studies, right? Cohort studies are another very, very important part of studies. They are like tracking patients' outcome over time. For instance, let's say I have 40 patients in ICU. They all got admitted at the same time. Now, what are the chances that they will get some or the other kind of infection being there, right? For a longer period, if you are there, you are bound to get some kind of infection over time. So, the quicker you can heal, the better it is to move you from there, right? So, what are the chances? Now, that is a cohort. All the people brought into that ICU or admitted there at the same time, they are all part of the same cohort. People born in the same year are probably part of the same cohort, right? When you bring in a bunch of students as first years, they are all part of one cohort. Now, who will learn how much and who will reach where is something that you can eventually see throughout your study. So, from one particular cohort, who succeeded and who landed where and who landed where, right? So, that's another cohort kind of a study. Then there are your randomized control trials, RCTs. These are, of course, trials. So you are doing the trial study here. They are randomized. Randomized how? Randomized in the sense as to you are not deliberately picking one type of patients there, right? Maybe one disease patients which you are trying to administer, but given that disease, other comorbidities are not all common. They are different. That is how you are randomizing it. That's how an RCT is developed. Let's say you are looking at fatty liver patients. So fatty liver is something that you want as a commonality, but you don't want their ages to be the same. You don't want them to all to be of the same gender. You don't want them all to have no diabetes or all of them to have diabetes or all of them to have hypertension with diabetes. No. Comorbidities you are not controlling, right? So that is a randomized control trial. That is a RCT kind of a study. Then there is meta-analysis. Now, meta-analysis is something very, very different. This is you are using already done work, existing literature. All the work that has already been done, you are utilizing all that work to give up a conclusion or make some more conclusive evidence. For example, evaluating multiple studies on vaccine effectiveness. Right? There are, let's say, certain vaccine, numerous research has already been done. You make use of all those research to conclude that, okay, how effective or not effective that medication or vaccine could be. For instance, COVID vaccine was there. There were multiple that were given. Now you combine their all work and see that how effective it was to actually give it or not to give it. That kind of a study would be your meta-analysis. Then there is qualitative research. Now, qualitative research is also one very important type of research. There are two main analyses that are done. Everything that I told so far does not apply to qualitative research. Qualitative research only has two types of things. It either has a thematic analysis or a sentiment. That's it. These are the only two major procedures which are used. And this kind of research are applied to open-ended questions. Right? For example, for instance, this workshop gets over and every participant here is being given up with a set of questions and asked about their feedbacks, right? And we do not keep it as satisfactory, not satisfactory and neutral. Instead, we keep it an open-ended. Let people give their opinion, write about it, right? Then that kind of an analysis is what is called qualitative. When you talk to a patient, you sit with him, have a discussion about how he felt throughout the time he was under your supervision, how he felt about it. Was he scared any time before or after a certain test was getting done? Now that kind of analysis is a qualitative analysis. Then there are mixed methods. Mixed methods are methods where you make use of both the aspects, qualitative as well as quantitative. Both the aspects are mixed. Let's say you are trying to do some psychological tests. There is a set of scaled surveys that you will give them. You know what their feedback means. Given ticked mark the certain thing, what it implies. And then there are certain open-ended questions that you have a conversation and get to know. And when you utilize both those information, make use of both the procedures, collectively what you get out of them is what is a mixed strategy. Then there are cluster analysis in healthcare. What are cluster analysis? When you're trying to group patients of a certain type based on their similar characteristics. For instance, grouping all the patients of a certain age group, grouping patients, all the patients who have a thyroid issue, right? Grouping all the patients who come with problems of kidney trouble, grouping them together and then sorting or analyzing them. Then that is a cluster analysis. Then there is decision trees and random forest. This is another predictive modeling technique. This is a very advanced version of predictive modeling, and what you try to predict here is you try to classify the patients. As I said, let's say cancer patients come up to you, which procedure or which stage they are at, that you will listen to their symptoms, you will get to understand the symptoms, and you will classify them in the different stages. Now that is what is decision making and random forest. Then there is time series analysis. Very easy example I'll give you of time series analysis. When unfortunate COVID thing happened, after the very first wave, nobody was understanding anything, but post that wave was gone, second, third and fourth wave, there were analysis, there were talk about it that, okay, how long this wave is going to last, how much impact it will have, how many people it will actually affect. Now those kind of things were done through trend analysis, and that trend analysis is done through time series. Then finally, big data and machine learning. As I said, this is using large scale, not 100 or 1000 or 10,000 data, but much larger set of data collectively, and then utilizing it to form one algorithm that can help you sort your predictive analysis. Then that is what is known as big data. For example, having one big set of bank where all the information of patients being brought to released, getting stored technically or technologically somewhere, then it gets same information gets collected for 10 different institutes and all gathered together. Now that one huge set of data is what is known as big data. And when you apply any algorithm that we discussed so far on that data, then it becomes machine learning for big data. Then what are the possible future directions in statistical learning? Now see, any kind of learning, whatsoever it is, future means that somehow you can have advancement that would only better the decision making, right? Better decision making capabilities, more accurately doing the predictions, because when you're trying to forecast, give an outcome, then the more accurate outcome is, the better it is. So the idea is to be more accurate, be more time oriented, be more patient care friendly. Those are the things that you will be more concerned about when you will talk about future advancements. And that's my last slide over here. And this says what? This says enhanced predictive analysis would help in early disease detection, right? Like if you have a better algorithm to run, maybe not after 3 stages you identify a cancer patient. Maybe you can do technologies that are that advanced that in a very initial stage it could actually be analyzed and can be predicted and can thus be more controlled, right? It does not have to be that, okay, half of my treatment is gone, half of my life is gone. Now with 2 months left, now the doctor is telling me, unfortunately, it is something that cannot be cured, right? Now it's neither his fault nor mine. It's the technology's fault. So let's try to build a technology that can ease that problem for us and help us predict much, much before, at least this much before, that we can actually do something about it, right? Like for instance, a test was run once, twice, thrice, 10th time it got run, and the 10th time it predicted something. That, okay, there is something which is cancerous in nature. Now, by that time, the amount of years that got lapsed cannot be brought back. The body is not that better now, so the cure will not work. So let's try to enhance and bring and make use of AI in a way that it can actually help us predict such things which are not as easily possible as by sound mind of ours yet. But with huge data, softwares can do that for us, right? They can give an advanced signals that, okay, constantly getting such a symptom means it's an early sign for a such a such disease. So let's be careful and manage accordingly our health. So that's the idea, and thank you so much.
Once more, give a big claps to madam, okay? Thank you, madam, for your excellent session. Of course, I'm very happy to say some few sentences on madam's session. She taught about whole research process, methods, methodology, different types of studies, both in quantitative as well as in qualitative, and how to analyze it, okay, depending upon the objectives as well as the study. And also mainly concerned about big data analysis, and also in predictive analytics, okay, analysis as well as in analytics in an health or medicine or in nursing. If you see in overall, it is one of the finest topic in an data collection as well as in data analysis. It was a very, very great learning. Thank you, madam. Thank you for your great session. Thank you. Thank you.